Hey, welcome back. Okay, so this is now week two of me moving into the new studio, and I'm still moving things around and shuffling things. We're almost done, so I'll give you guys a studio tour very soon. But today I want to talk about a topic that I've been getting more questions about since I have started carrying more artisan knives on my e-store. These are some of the biggest complaints I've gotten from people who have bought an artisan knife and have returned their knives. So I'll give you guys their complaints, which is kind of funny sometimes. We have pretty much a no questions asked return policy on our e-store, and so but a lot of times customers feel like they have to justify their return requests and whatnot. And quite honestly, if these buyers had researched and done some more homework on their own time, none of these problems would have been an issue. This is more or less for those who are looking to buy an artisan knife for the first time and they're wondering what they're going to be getting themselves into, whether or not artisan knives are going to give them what they are looking for. Guys, I'm not making any of this up, okay? These complaints are real. I definitely want to hear your feedback to these complaints, so let me know in the comments what you guys think of them. And I'll do my best to link the knives that were discussed in this video in the video description. I know oftentimes you guys ask me to do these things and I forget. I will do my best to do that. So the first complaint I get is that artisan knives are too expensive relative to their manufactured counterparts. So the first thing is artisan knives are made by an artisan. Typically speaking, artisans work alone. Every once in a while, you may have a co-op sort of system where, such as in Ichizen, for example, you may have like 5 or 6 artisans that are working side by side, and generally speaking, they all make their own blades, but they may share 1 or 2 sharpeners. They also may share the same handle maker, for example. But generally speaking, artisans work alone. So when you think about a process or a product that is made by one person or maybe a team of 2 or 3 at the absolute most, yeah, the cost is going to go higher. You know, they have to spend a lot more time making it. They don't have a line of 50, 60 employees making 1,000 knives a day. These artisans pump out sometimes as little as 2 to 3 knives a day. Even really prophetic artisans like Yu Kurosaki may only make 20, 30 knives a day. And so, yeah, so these knives are going to cost more money. They're handmade from scratch. Now, even though generally speaking, artisan knives can cost more than factory-made knives, they also can cost less. For example, you can buy an Anryu for, let's say, $250, and a knife made by Miyabi, say the Miyabi Birchwood, which retails for $279. On any given day, I would choose the Anryu over the Miyabi at any time. Even though Miyabi makes a really good knife, I'd rather buy the knife from the artisan, supporting a local knife maker. So even though the argument, generally speaking, is true that artisan knives can cost more, there is a justified reason for that. But also on the flip side, they can cost less. Now the next point is somewhat valid, but also comical. Now the customer claimed that this is not the first time they've bought a $700 knife. They've claimed that they've bought German knives, other Japanese knives that are more expensive than the Saji, which I'm not going to argue with that. But they also said that this is the first time they've ever received a knife that has the oxide finish still on the blade, that it wasn't wiped down properly, and that there's still red felt on the handle ferrule. Okay, I'm not joking. The email literally said that there's red felt on the ferrule, that the knife is dirty, and that it was not a $700 knife. So, you know, I said, well, fine, we'll take it back, no problem, no big deal. Here's what you have to understand. A knife made in a factory such as Yaxel, Miyabi, they have a team dedicated at the very end of the production line to wipe down every single knife. That's great, that's fine, more power to the companies that do that. Artisans are making one knife at a time. Now they do wipe their knives down, but sometimes when a knife that is made with a finish such as the black oxide from the Saji, it's not that it wasn't wiped down, it just maybe wasn't wiped down with rubber alcohol, you know, for a minute at a time. So there may be some residue on your blade when you buy it. The red felt, well, I mean, it's a lining material for the blade. The knife shifts around during shipping, and so every once in a while, yeah, you may pick up the knife and there is going to be some red felt material that was attached to the handle in shipping. Again, that is not something that you should complain about. That's not something that should be considered a defect. And it certainly doesn't take away from the quality of the blade. When you buy a new knife, wash it before you use it. It's just good practice, okay? It doesn't have to be an artisan knife. Whatever it is, wash your knives before you use them. The next reason I can think of is knives may be inconsistent. So here's the thing about knives that are handmade. They're handmade. Now, sure, many artisans actually make their knives in steps and in batches. So they may hammer out 20 billets at a time, and then they may grind 20 knives at a time, and then all those 20 knives will go into the sharpening. So getting inconsistencies between blades is gonna happen. A blade may be 2.3 millimeters thick on one side, and then the next blade may be 2.2 millimeters thick on the spine. If you look at this knife made by Kato, it's the Awagami Super Nashiji finish. Beautiful, beautiful knife. This knife here is not a Tsuchime finish, so it's not supposed to have the hammer marks that are like really visible in the finished product. So when buying a handmade product, or in this case a handmade knife, yeah, you may see kind of leftovers or telltale signs of the processes that this knife has gone through to get to where it is as a finished product. Another example was a Yu Kurosaki that had the cladding material. There was one spot on the blade that the cladding material went closer to the cutting edge than the rest of the blade. I understand that a lot of these customers are used to buying, knives that are more or less cosmetically perfect by other manufacturers out there. But when buying a handmade knife, these things you have to kind of give grace for. And the next reason why you may not want to buy an artisan knife is that not all artisan knives come out of the box razor sharp. So let me give you my personal experience of this topic. Every single artisan knife I have owned, everything from Ichizen is or has come razor sharp. The only artisan knife I have ever gotten that is average in terms of sharpness was a knife by Akazawa, the white number 2. I think it was made by Shiraki. I also have to kind of put in there that when I ordered that knife, they asked me, do I want the knife sharpened, unsharpened, or like razor sharp as possible? Or I think the ordering guide was, do you want it extra thin, or just leave the knife alone, I'll sharpen it myself, was actually one of the options they gave me. I told them to ship me the knife as is. Like, don't sharpen it, let me just get the knife as is. And when I got the knife on the Best PT50A, if you guys don't know what that is, it's just basically a knife scale that I use to measure edge sharpness. It scored around 300, which to me is fine. So that knife, when it came to me, it wasn't the sharpest knife I've ever gotten, but I wasn't offended, I wasn't shocked, because I actually asked for the knife to be unsharpened. Every other artisan knife I've ever received has been extremely sharp. We're talking like razor sharpness under a 200 on the Best scale. Now, there are people out there that will tell you that many artisans understand that their customers love to sharpen knives, and so some artisans may leave the knives not as razor sharp and kind of ship their knives that way. Others will say, no, the pride of my knife is that it will come to the customer razor sharp. So when buying a knife, you just have to do some really quick research. You can ask the knife shop who's selling the knife or the knife artisan who's selling it and say, hey, are your knives going to need any sort of additional sharpening? Is this something I have to be aware of? 99% of the time, you will receive a knife that is just absolutely razor sharp. Edge sharpness is good, no doubt about that, but things like blade geometry, ergonomics, choice of material, overall fit and finish to me are much higher on the scale of importance than absolute sharpness out of the box. So again, there's nothing wrong with wanting a very sharp knife, but you have to be aware that if you're buying a knife that is $200, $300, $400, you should also be prepared to sharpen the knife yourself when the time comes. And this last point has less to do with quality, but with actual availability. When you're buying an artisan, you're buying a knife made by that artisan, typically that month, that year, whatever it may be, or sometimes even that day. That knife may not be available in a month, it may not be available in a year, or even longer than that. And to me, the saddest reason why you cannot buy a knife made by a certain artisan is age. I had a chance to meet one of my favorite knife makers, Anryu-san, in Japan last year, and I think he's like 80 years old this year, or very close to 80. And he's very strong, he's very robust. I also got to meet Saji-san, and again, he is also well into his 70s and maybe even 80s right now. And to me, having a chance to sit down with these artisans, these Ichizen blade masters, was such a privilege. But the thought that I may not be able to see him the next time I come back to Japan is a really sad thought. And another example of a series of knives that are no longer available are knives made by Kato-san, with handles made by a man by the name of Sadao Nishihara. And Sadao Nishihara retired in 2019. The last knives he worked on were made by Kato-san. I was actually able to pick up a batch of the final production from Kato slash Sadao Nishihara, and they are just absolutely beautiful. They're the black Damascus and the Tsuchime finishes with they call them the Coca-Cola bottle finishes on the handles. Really beautiful handles. So this series of Kato knives had the cherry handle and the ironwood, and then there was like 3 knives that were made with the birchwood, but they had a dye of purple and gray, and there were only 3 of those, so I actually bought all 3 of those, and I bought a few of the cherry and the ironwood as well. Absolutely gorgeous knives. And to me it's like, all right, I'm actually literally holding a knife that you cannot buy anymore. But that's a perfect example of artisans who are no longer making knives because of age or death, or whatever else may be. Now, if you buy an artisan knife from someone like Ikeda or Yu Kurosaki, who are in their late 30s and 40s, you can probably grow with them. You can probably have 20-30 years of buying their knives, and that's no problem. But if your first Japanese knife is an Anryu or a Kato, or a Saji, you might not have that much time to buy another one. Again, this is not me making fun of customers who have no experience buying Japanese, handmade knives, but it's something you should understand, that handmade knives are just that. They're handmade knives. They're gonna have imperfections. They're gonna have cosmetic, markings that may not be visible on a factory-made knife. That's gonna happen. Give some grace to these people. These guys are spending their entire lives making knives for you and me. They're making a half a dozen knives a day, sometimes just a few knives a day, so that they can feed their families. But the truth is, I can hold up any knife and tell you there's something wrong with it if we look hard enough. Don't take my word on this one point, but reach out to a friend that owns a Japanese handmade knife, whether it's a Yu Kurosaki, Hinora, Anryu, whatever it is. Ask him, is that knife the best knife you own? 99% of the time, I think he'll say or she'll say, yes, it is. A well-crafted handmade Japanese knife will be one of the best investments you make for your kitchen. Anyways, guys, love to hear your thoughts on any of the points I brought up. Do you disagree or agree with me? Let me know in the comments. Love to hear what you guys were thinking. All right, well, thank you for being here, and I'll catch you in the next video.